Hi and welcome to the NBA show. My name is Morten Jensen and today we'll be looking at the early returns of some of the guys who were traded at the trade deadline. Stay tuned. Now let's start with Aaron Gordon, who moved from the Orlando Magic to the Denver Nuggets. His raw stat line is not going to blow anybody away. He's averaging 11 points, 4 rebounds, and 2.7 assists throughout the first 3 games that he's played. That doesn't really look like much, but it doesn't tell the whole story at all. Gordon's presence has been a revelation for the Nuggets. The fact that you have to guard him as a lob threat, as a shooter, as a cutter, as a slasher, as someone who can just create havoc away and on the ball, plus you also have the benefit of throwing both him, Michael Porter Jr. and Nikola Vucevic into pick and rolls, both as a ball handler but also the screener. That has just caused headaches for opponents in the early going. Gordon's stat line, forget about it. It's not important. His impact has been tremendous. He is integrating himself with the Nuggets in a way where he plays beyond the stat line. And I know for many people that sounds a little bit off, but sometimes players, Andre Iguodala in particular, can have this great impact on a team despite not putting up major numbers. Gordon is doing that for the Nuggets right now. Defensively, he's been super impressive. Offensively, he's just been doing everything they've asked of him. He isn't carrying much of an offensive burden, but it doesn't seem to matter. He is just reacting to the flow of the offense. He's reacting to Nikola Vucevic. He's reacting to Michael Porter Jr. He's reacting to Jamal Murray. And you know what? That's exactly what the Nuggets needed. Gordon is flourishing in this fourth option role, and it would behoove the Nuggets to keep him in that, because him not having a great self-creation offensive burden is helping him fill out all the little things that the Nuggets need. So right now, the early returns on the Aaron Gordon trade, thumbs up Denver. It really is looking good. It looks like Gordon is going to be a long-term piece there. He is fitting in perfectly. Moving on to the Chicago Bulls, where Nikola Vucevic was acquired for a very steep price, and the early returns on an individual scale has been perfectly fine. Vucevic is averaging 22 points, 9.3 rebounds, 4 assists per game, shooting a high percentage from the field. He's done well individually. It hasn't been a problem for him. The Chicago Bulls, however, have lost 3 games, all 3. He still has not won a game as a member of the Chicago Bulls. Now, to be fair, some of that is also Zach LaVine missing some time, and also the Bulls just overhauled their roster to an extent that was not expected, I think is fair to say, which means it just takes so much longer for guys to get on the same page. But Vucevic, from an individual perspective, has been outstanding. He's picking and popping, he's picking and rolling, he's posting up, he's shooting from mid-range, he's shooting from 3. He is doing everything that the Chicago Bulls traded him for. He has been just a revelation in terms of a big man option. You are finally in Chicago getting reliable offensive production from the center position. That has just been such a big boon for them. It's something that they are realizing we can move forward with this, we can utilize this, we can build around this. And when Zach LaVine gets healthy again, watch out. That twosome could be extremely potent on an offensive scale. LaVine is already playing a little bit off of Vucevic, especially in triple handoff situations. He's getting those feeds, he's getting set up by Vuce and vice versa. That two-man game has a lot of potential moving forward. Plus, it seems that already Vucevic has found some chemistry with rookie Patrick Williams. It seems those two are really connecting a lot. The defensive attention that Vuce gathers has opened Williams to an extent I don't think he anticipated, and now the rookie is trying to make the most of it. To be fair, Williams is only 19 years old, so sometimes he doesn't really utilize that space that's now created for him, but as the season progresses, I fully expect the rookie to learn. I fully expect him to adapt a little bit more to Vucevic and realize step by step just how much of a luxury it is to have an offensive center in Vuce who can both shoot, post up, drive, do virtually everything offensively, because that's going to provide Williams with a ton of space. And when LaVine is healthy and he and Vuce are clicking, I have a feeling, a very sneaky suspicion at least, that Williams is going to be that third guy who can unlock a lot of potential for the Chicago Bulls. But right now, they are struggling. That's obviously not great, but in terms of context, it's super important to realize that they just overhauled their entire team, so it's on some level understandable. But the early returns for Vuce individually has been outstanding. He is going to unlock a lot for this Bulls team. A guy who was given up for the Bulls to actually acquire Vucevic was former Bulls center Wendell Carter Jr., who's now playing for the Orlando Magic. And look, the early returns for Wendell has been tremendous. The guy is averaging 13.3 points, 8.7 rebounds, 1.3 blocks, shooting 70% from the field, and he's doing all of that in just 23 minutes of playing time. Carter has been a revelation, just a tremendous offensive spark, also defensive. He has just closed games and defensively has played very, very consistently. He is one of the leading young guys on the team. I think he's ready to take on more of a role. It just is a question of how much Steve Clifford decides to trust him moving forward. Clifford has this reputation of being a little bit hard on rookies, or at least being a little bit reluctant to play rookies or guys on rookie skill contracts, at least young guys, essentially. And Carter fits that mold. He's only 21, so you're looking at a situation where Carter has to earn that trust, but I think he is doing that. His consistent play has been what he really didn't provide in Chicago. Now he's providing it in Orlando. I think the change of scenery was so important for him. He is finally going to a place where he can be allowed to be himself, evolve through his own merits. I don't think that we are looking at a situation where the book is closed on Carter as a potential all-star down the line. Maybe he won't reach that level, but right now he is certainly playing to an extent where you're thinking there's a lot more there. There's a lot more in that bag of his that we haven't seen before and that he hasn't really had a chance to showcase. What I'm looking at is not really how he finishes out this year, although that is extremely important, don't get me wrong. What I'm looking at is next year, after he's gone through a full training camp with the Orlando Magic and him getting presumably the slot at the starting center. I could see this. I could see this going down big time, where Carter next year becomes a double-double machine, someone who takes an unexpected leap offensively, something that we never really talk about a whole lot in the Wendell Carter context. And I wouldn't be shocked if he becomes the best player on the Magic next season. Not saying he will be, I'm just saying I wouldn't be shocked. Next up is another Magic-related player, Evan Fournier, who got traded from the Magic to the Boston Celtics. He's played 2 games for the team so far, and it's been tremendously ugly. Fournier is shooting 18.8% from the field in those 2 games, averaging just a measly 3 points per game, and he's 0 for 7 from downtown. That's usually his bread and butter. Now, obviously, this is going to change. I don't believe in the early numbers. This is just him getting acclimated to a brand new team. He spent the vast majority of his career in Orlando. It's going to take a minute. He is not an 18% shooting player. Obviously, he's not. He's much better than that. It's a 2-game sample size. I'm not concerned whatsoever. I just found it amusing that we're looking at all these guys who are doing really well after the trade deadline, and then we have Fournier, who's essentially laying an egg in the first 2 games. That's not going to be sustainable. Obviously, he's going to be so much better. He's a floor spacer. He's someone who can get into the teeth of the defense. He's going to be set up by a lot of these guys. I'm not worried. This is just a 2-game sample size where he's been horrible and trying to get acclimated to his new surroundings, trying to build chemistry with his teammates. I'm not concerned. So while the early returns have been superbly ugly, we're looking at a situation that's going to get a lot better very, very soon. So Boston fans, don't you worry. He's going to be just fine. And if he's not, oh boy. But I don't believe that to be the case whatsoever. He's just too consistent an offensive player. He's just too good of a shooter. He's just a guy who's got too good of an offensive field to be this, whatever it is right now. And also the 0 for 7 from downtown, as I touched on before, to me, that is just the typical proof that that's not sustainable, because he is just a guy who can get cooking. He's a guy who's a reliable off-ball shooter. So that's a dead giveaway in terms of him just really being thrown into a system he doesn't know. So I'm not worried. I don't think he's worried. I don't think the Celtics are worried, and you shouldn't be worried either. He'll be just fine. Finally, we're going to Portland, where we're going to be taking a look at Norman Powell. So here's the thing. Powell, before the trade, was averaging close to 20 points per game in Toronto, and some people are already now pointing out, well, his scoring average is lower because he's averaging 16.3 points per game in Portland. And you know what? That's ridiculous. Context matters here. The guy is shooting 52% from the field and 58% from downtown. He is just giving a lot of room to both Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. It was expected that offensively he wouldn't necessarily have the same high volume as he did in Toronto. Like, what he's doing right now in terms of an efficiency standpoint is tremendous. He's fitting in, he's taking the right shots, he's playing off the right guys. The early returns on Norman Powell has been great. It's just a matter of him actually evening out. I think his shooting numbers are going to go down a little bit. They are going to come back to earth, at which point it would be interesting to look at where he ends up scoring wise. He may not be a 20-point scorer on that particular team, but I don't think anyone in the NBA or the Portland Trail Blazers organization is looking at him going, well, you know, he's not the scorer that we thought he was, because it's not about raw points per game. It really never is for NBA teams. It's about how a player fits in. It's about efficiency. It's about shooting. It's about playing off of certain guys. And he's doing that. He is playing efficient basketball by actually being the third offensive wheel. Now, in Toronto, he was much higher on the pecking order, but he made it to this team and he understands his role. That's the thing about Norman Powell. While he's in his prime, he is very, very aware of his surroundings, who he is as a player, which is also why I think he is going to earn top dollar on the free agent market this very summer, because he is just so reliable. Offensively, defensively, he's got upside. There's a lot to like there, and right now the Portland Trail Blazers just need to figure out the right recipe to get everything moving so they can make a run in the 2021 NBA playoffs. But his early returns are great. When I watch him play for the Blazers, I feel he is more integrated than anyone else, maybe outside of Aaron Gordon right now, which is impressive because it's only been 3 games. It hasn't been much of a sample size. So we're looking at a guy who is so good at playing off the ball, playing off of guys, that I don't think there is going to be a long process here. Now, of course, there are going to be situations here and there where he misreads a play or he calls out the wrong thing. You know, that's going to happen, of course. Right now, he's kind of free-flowing a little bit. But the great thing about Powell is that he's a guy who can do that just because of his scoring prowess. It doesn't really matter if he's being put on ball or off ball. He works. So I'm not concerned about the long-term fit. I'm not concerned about anything here. It really has been a very positive first 3 games for him. So I look forward to see how he's going to continue to fare in Portland. Overall, when we're looking at the NBA trade deadline, it does seem like players who made it to new teams are actually working out pretty well. Evan Fournier notwithstanding, but it's only been 2 games. I'm not really worried, as I said. But it does seem like NBA teams have grown a little bit smarter in terms of realizing and identifying which players they want around on their own teams. And in part, I think that's due to analytics. I think it's due to the statistical evolution that we're seeing. Teams are just more inclined to understand who they are, where their strengths are, how do we add to that, where are our weaknesses and how do we solve those. And they have all this tremendous data on players around the league. They're looking at those guys, they're looking at the numbers, they're watching game tape, they're talking to their pro scouts, and they're trying to figure out, okay, is this guy we're looking at right now, is he going to be a long-term piece for us? Could he be a long-term piece for us? Does he fill some holes? What does he provide us that we don't already have? Or does he already provide what we have, but more of it to the point where we can be the league's best in this particular category? There's so many layers to this. And for players to have this great early returns, that's just another feather in most teams' cap. I think the league, in terms of intelligence and where they are when it comes to analysis and understanding what players are, it's the best we've ever seen. And I think trades can reflect that now. I think we're reaching that point where we can see when teams trade for a guy, they understand why. There's a reason for it. It's not just something they throw together out of the blue. So I'm very, very psyched to follow all these players, plus all the other names that I didn't bring up over the course of the rest of the season. And then we'll see. A lot of them are going to be free agents after this season, and they might have new homes afterwards. Some might resign. So I'll definitely keep you updated on that right here on the channel. So far, so good. I look forward to watching everyone, and you should too.